So this is called planning for profit, finding ways to strategize, maximize, and protect your bottom line. This was from a couple of months ago. I did this presentation in January, and this was the stock market. Stock market's gone up for 11 years. So a lot of people got lulled to sleep thinking that the market was just going to keep going, keep going. Many people have been pretty apathetic about the market because they got trained. Every one of these dips was a buying opportunity for 11 years. So a lot of people got trained to think, and that's why there's a bit of a disconnect right now between what's happening in the stock market. It's still near highs. It's recovered about 30% from the March lows. This is not going to go on forever. And the reason this is important is because when the money goes down, people pull back. And a lot of food businesses are non-essential. You know, dining out is not essential. Cooking inside is, obviously. So that affects the overall mentality, people's budgets, people's willingness to spend, especially on non-essentials. The other thing that's happened, this is Fed funds rate. It's gone down, 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 down for 40 years. It's not going to stay down here. And the reason that's important for a business is because if you're borrowing money to fund your business, which most businesses are, rates are going to go up. If you have a home equity line of credit that you use to fund your business, you're going to get hurt on if you have a home equity, they are variable, and it'll continue to go up. So this will affect your cash flow. I've seen business owners that have had a personal problem, like a child with drug addiction, where they spent an immense amount of money, and then when the downturn came, they didn't have enough to be able to survive their own tough time in the business. So these are important from both the macro perspective in terms of what could be happening in the economy, as well as how you want to think about your personal assets and what it's going to do in terms of business. Demographics, we have the millennials actually bigger than the baby boomers. The Gen X and the millennials together are almost 150 million. Close to 160 million. There's 35 million of what we call seniors, which need another name, but they're basically 70 plus. Many of them do have money, and so they can be a very good target market. Baby boomers are spend. They have nothing saved. So one of my concerns is that this near-death experience for so many people, if they near-death in terms of economic loss, never mind whether you knew somebody that died, but I think that people are scared, and then we may go back into a savings economy. So you want to think about that in terms of who you're selling to. And the fun fact on the bottom is the Gen Ys are actually going to be earning 46% of the income in the United States just in 5 years. So that's pretty startling as far as I'm concerned. So you want to think about whether the trends are your friend. So we have slowing global economic output. In my opinion, we have a housing bubble. I was on a Darien, Connecticut working moms networking group last week, and houses in Darien are going like crazy, but that's because the wealthy people want to escape New York City. I see homes in places like Ridgefield, Connecticut, more modest income areas that are sitting. There's also used car glut. We've got more and more expensive cars, so we finance them over a longer period of time. And again, the reason this all plays in for you is you've got to think about how you're positioned, where you're going to sell going forward in terms of which market, how you're going to position your goods, your services, and what pricing you're going to use. There's also a huge decline of brick and mortar stores, JCPenney's, J. Crew, and one other, Neiman Marcus. All three filed bankruptcy in the last 2 weeks. So that's not a trend that's going away. Amazon is a category killer. Here are some growth areas. Anything related to pets. Pet business is humongous. I have a lot of animals. I rescue animals. So I know the pet business really well as well. There's 97 million cats in the United States, 90 million dogs. So to the extent that you can pivot your business to include anything related to pets is huge. We spend $24 billion a year on dog food, and it's growing at 25%. Over-the-counter nutraceuticals, anything sort of semi-pharma, is 17 billion, growing at about 12% in the pet area. So those are, again, good areas to look at. Anything related to elder care, Health and nutrition, which is where, of course, the vegan entrepreneurs really play. There's been a 600% increase in the last 3 years of people in the United States identifying themselves as vegan. Also resale clothing. I happen to have a vintage clothing company, a startup that I'm working on that was a store in the city. And this category is going to be huge as well, 39 billion by 2025 in the resale clothing. And then anything urban. Millennials are staying in cities. They're living in areas. They have one woman that actually has a livability app. So it's kind of it can be put as an overview on Zillow. So if you're looking at a house, it tells you how close you are to parks, how close you are to Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, etc. So anything related to urban. So if you're in the burbs, the trends are going against you, although after Corona, that may change a bit. COVID-19
Kathy, quick
consequences
question.
so far. Oh, sorry.
Just on the resale clothing, yes. So basically you mean like a more like upscale thrift shop type stuff? Is that what you're talking about?
Everything from Poshmark to the Real Real. The Real Real did $1 billion last year. And that woman, that's her fourth startup. She was pets.com in the .com crisis. So yeah, the millennials love, there's actually 5 demographic areas, psychographics with the demographics, and we're back. The millennials and the Ys are part of like sustainability, to save it, the gig economy. So those trends, you want to think about positioning yourself in terms of your services to them. So yeah, it's a huge category. And people like Paul McCartney's daughter, I can't remember her first name right now, Stella McCartney. What they're doing is they're actually doing coupons. So if you buy one of their outfits from the Real Real, they will give you a discount on the original. So it's an interesting trend in terms of where you want to position yourself. And hopefully I can get back to where I was. Yep, okay, good. So COVID-19, huge, 36.5 million people out of work, and many of the people that I follow believe that that is a low statistic. It could be as high as 39 million. And when surveyed, people actually think 77% of people think they're going to be rehired, and yet surveys out of the University of Chicago are telling us that only 3 out of 10 will be hired. It's only 30%. And in the restaurant industry and hospitality, one of the issues you're facing is this government stipend that they've done with the extra $1,200 along with the extended or $600 a week it makes it very, very unattractive for a worker in a hair salon, nail salon, food service to go back to work. And so even if you got your PPP, you can't get your workers to come back in some cases. We're facing that across the country as we open up. You're going to also have an increase. Yep.
With regards to that, though, if you offer an employee who's on unemployment back and they reject, can't you then let the unemployment agency know they've been offered their job back and they've refused, and then they lose the unemployment?
I don't know the technicalities on that. It is possible, but if you got your PPP money, 75% of that needs to be tied to employees. So, and you only have an 8-week period from the time you got it, right? And so what some people are waiting to do is wait until that 8-week period is over and then fire people. So I don't know the technicalities about whether or not you report the unemployment. I think the unemployment offices are so overwhelmed that getting through to somebody to try to report them, I think would be at the low end of their list. We've got people that are, we have a company that's trying to sell, and, so I think I've seen people not get any answer yet on employment. So that's an issue. You also have an increased cost for compliance. So any of you that are working with the public in any way, shape, or form, you're going to have extra costs for gowns, masks, gloves. This is a huge issue. Getting good quality and getting cost-effective garments has been an issue. I actually have a source for PPE, and we've been we've been working with some manufacturing companies to supply it to them. But this is going to be an issue that France spent $150 million on an order from China, and 82% of the masks were defective. So from a cost going forward, you've got to now add a line item for this stuff that you never had before. So no matter where your employees are going to be, if you're a catering firm, if you're going out to events, hosting events, you know, you're going to have your employees masked multiple times. So this becomes another cost, another line item. We're facing an uphill battle. If the governments continue with this 50-person limit, it's going to destroy a lot of businesses. 25% of restaurants are supposed to not open. And, you know, I run my own events, and I can't do it. In Rosa Caterer, she'll tell you it's just as much work to cook for 50 as it is for 100. And, you know, so you can't make money on 50. And if you're set for a restaurant, you have 100 seats, 150 seats, you must turn that at least 2 times in order for any business to make money. So this then has a trickle down, because it's going to affect everything from sign makers to the graphic designers to the printers, to gasoline. I mean, it just, the trickle down on any of these industries being affected is so great. And then the other thing we're going to be facing, many vegans are applauding the fact that, you know, the Smithfield Foods shut down a couple plants. There's 150 million chickens being killed in Iowa who were layers because people are not buying the eggs they were buying. So longer term may be good for vegans, but there's going to be food inflation. And you're seeing corn go down, but corn in the United States is largely GMOs, so many of us would not use it. Any of us that are careful about health, but you have fewer cows eating and fewer pigs, fewer animals eating, so the corn is going down, but overall there's going to be food inflation. And so that's something else to figure out if you're pricing in your goods. There's been a surge. Try to get seeds on Amazon. It's almost impossible. You can't get seeds until like end of June. So as a business owner, these are the 5 areas. I'm only going to just go through these. I won't delve into them right now because we don't have time, but you want to think about your product or service. This is where many entrepreneurs stop. They are good at what they do. Sometimes they came out of an industry where they were doing something corporate, or they worked for someone else and then run with it. And there's a couple of entrepreneur support systems. The E-Myth was written around this. Michael Gerber wrote the book that basically entrepreneurs excel at what they do, but nobody teaches us how to do these other pieces. And you really have to look at these 5 pillars. So you have to have operations, and that's everything from where your location is going to be, how much rent you're going to pay, what technology, everything that makes the business hum. And we reluctantly deal with that. Then there's HR, whether you're a solopreneur and have 1099 help, or you have 200 employees. You've got to address the human resources component. And then financial. A lot of times I see financial as an accidental. Most CPAs are what we call historians. They take what already happened and they just massage it. They do not generally give you help going forward. And with your financials, you really do want to run projections. One of the things we do for people is run multiple sets of what if. What if your business does this? What if your business does that? And then assume things like what I'm talking about, where you're going to have added costs for compliance, or you're going to have potentially employees that you're going to have to pay more in order to get them to stay on if they're fearful, and then inflation on food. So you want to run these things. And then very often business development is accidental, or the business owner is the only one that develops the business. So these 5 areas are critical, and you really need to focus on every single one and have attention for each one. So planning is paramount. I'm a planaholic. I don't go to the grocery store without a list. I keep lists in a drawer in the kitchen, and for Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and Costco. I have 14 animals, so I go to Costco every couple of weeks, and I buy lettuce and dog food and cat food there, but people laugh at me. I don't understand how people go shopping without a list. So I plan my meals out, and so you really want to take that same approach to your business. No business plan will ever work 100%. It will always change. But if you at least have a plan, you're adept at being able to massage it, and pivot if you need to. So you want to think about what products and services you currently offer, what you're going to add. And this is critical. I can't tell you how many businesses misprice things. We have a flavors and fragrance company in our mix, and he took over a company and found out that 60% of their products were not profitable because they were using such a tiny amount of some of the flavorings, but they really didn't price it out appropriately. And so that's another issue, is very often people are selling things at an actual loss when you really take all your costs into account. Another thing you want to think about as a business is, do you have a barrier to entry? So the vintage clothing store, if I gave away the entire idea, there actually isn't really a barrier to entry. Some of the things we're putting in will create. You want someone else not to be able to just hang a shingle out and be able to do exactly what you're doing. So you want to create something that's unique about you, that's a little bit difficult to create. I'm not really talking about trademarking or patenting. I'm talking about the business, that it's got to be difficult to replicate in some way, shape, or form, and then therefore you have something of value. And so you also have to think about how you're going to grow. Are you going to be adding team members to grow? Are you going to add sectors with different team members to take them and run with them? And what is your marketing and visibility? We've got a huge amount of social media. Most business owners in the food business should live on Instagram rather than Facebook. But that takes a little bit of work to get going, and it takes a little while it's harder to get followers on Instagram, in my opinion, than it is on Facebook and some of the other medium. So you really want to pick your channel and think about it. One of the things that I've noticed is with our social media, we're very active. We have about 20,000 followers, and we post with an automatic poster. I use Hootsuite, and we post on 7 Facebook groups and pages, and LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. And we do it in the beginning of the week. One of my VAs does it, and we post 5 times a day. And our traction has gone down dramatically. Even though there's more people online, I don't know whether it's the algorithm that's affecting us, because we're not truly being organic since we're posting this with a poster. So that's something to keep in mind in terms of costs going forward. Who's going to do the marketing? You're going to have somebody out external or somebody internal, and then they're going to be actually physically posting, or you're going to do what we do, which is much more efficient. But if you don't get the traction, it's an issue. So marketing should not be accidental. You really have to think about it. You should have a beautiful website. There's so many inexpensive website designers. I'm happy to refer people if you don't have one and need one. And then you have to choose your channel. You can't be everywhere all the time. And so I have one graphic designer I'm working with right now, and she's got all these channels, multiple, business and personal. And so I'm trying to have her narrow down, like have our Pinterest just be personal and really focus on a few. And you want to make sure that whatever branding you have comes all the way through, and that you have a systematic approach to marketing. It's not accidental. It's not occasional. You really just have to map the strategy out. I'm going to give you some resources at the end, and there's a podcast that I absolutely love for social media. Sorry, I'm going so quick. I just want to be cognizant of the time. So if you're going to build your business into a saleable entity, and that's a lot of what I do. I come in early and try to help people figure out how they're going to grow it so that the owner is unessential. If you're it and everything's in your head, and that's really the issue with many businesses, that's why the failure rate is so high from one generation to another, because the patriarch or matriarch tends to have everything in their head. They've been doing it for 30, 40 years. And they just know things. And, you know, they'll come into bookkeeping or operations, and I've heard it from employees going, I don't know how she knows that. How did she just come over my desk and say, oh, you're doing that wrong? Or don't sell to this person. And it's because it's based on tons of experience. But to document all this is really painful for many of us. You know, business owners want to just do what we do. We have vision, we execute, we're usually fast, we usually like action. And so sitting down and documenting how we do everything is really tedious. But that's the key to growth. And delegating, you should only be doing the things in life that you can do, that no one else can do. So even if you're in sales, that's not the only, you're not the only person that can sell. But if you're the idea generator, or you're the person who's planning out the business, or it's your capital at risk, so you're going to try a new venture, that's what you do. And again, I'll give you another podcast for that as well. So your team doesn't have to be full-time employees. It can be your CPA if you find one that really is forward-thinking. It can be an advisor, business coach. A fractional CFO can be awesome. Even if they work once a month, they can give you tons of help and advice going forward. I have a very large grocery store that is fourth generation, and they were down 15% in revenue through Q3 last year on over 50 million of revenue, because the fourth gen CEO is trying all different types of new things and there's no metrics. And so they're losing money on a lot of these new things, and my gal can't get the votes, so I haven't been able to get in there. You can also do a fractional chief marketing officer, so that can be another very good use of time. You bring someone in, just create the high level strategy, and then you can have your internal team execute, or you can have external, less expensive team as well. And then don't overlook legal. We have a couple of business lawyers who are general lawyers and general practitioners, and they act like general counsel. So one of my little phrases that I love is, it's cheaper to stay out of trouble than get out of trouble. And as entrepreneurs, we're often looking at our costs and like, who wants billable hours from an attorney? So very often we'll download something from the internet. Who hasn't done that? But that can get you into a lot of trouble. One of my trust and estate attorneys told me he'd like to go to court every single day of the week against somebody who did their own will. So there's only 168 hours in a week. And, you know, I know that from the days when I started on Wall Street, and, you know, they'd see if you can work 140 of those. So you've got to really think about how you're going to spend those. If you have a family and you want to have some balance in your life, then you've got to carve out some family time. People think I don't sleep, I do. And so you have to be able to carve that time out. You want to make sure that you're functioning at peak productivity, and that's something that can be at risk. Right now, I think so many people are fatigued. And I think, you know, one of the things that I do is I time block. And I'm a high energy person in general, but I'm a higher energy in the morning. So I use the morning to tackle the harder things that it's easy to whip things off your plate, but you want to really, like, if you're trying to land a client, then that's more important than anything else. So you want to focus your time. And if you block your time, you'll come back and say, oh, I've got to get rid of some of these things on my plate. Also, having team meetings and letting your team know where they are. Yesterday, one of my attorneys was on a COVID-19 panel, and she said, a lot of people right now are doing this slow death. They're like laying people off a little bit at a time. You know, Uber just came back last week and said another 3,000 drivers out. You know, and so that's a very painful death. It's very demoralizing to your team. So it's better to be open and communicative. Another podcast I was listening to was talking about opening the books and getting the employees actually to really buy in. And owners sometimes are afraid of that because, oh, well, he'll see how much I'm making. Well, they already think you make $1 million anyway. So, you know, open up the books and you'll get a lot more participation. You also want to have written procedures for how things are done, and you want to focus your energy on the highest payoff activities every day. Cash is king. I can't stress this enough. Right now, there's $800 billion in private equity, and they're looking for things to buy, but the map has changed. No longer are you going to get a cash offer and they're going to walk away. They're going to want some skin in the game. So if you're planning for an exit, you got to assume that you're going to have some equity at risk, and you're going to have to work the venture for 3 to 5 years. And so that's different than it was last year. Many private equity firms are afraid of what's coming. But if you have cash, you can buy out. You can weather a storm. B, you can buy your competitor out. There's going to be some weak players in here. There's going to be bankruptcies. There's going to be death on the street, in my opinion, in commercial real estate and even multifamily housing. So there's some opportunities there if you have cash. So one of the businesses I saw go from 5 million to 1 million. Dad, second generation, was 89 before he left. So CEO, who's 75 now, didn't get to run the business until he was 60. And he just did not survive. He really couldn't plan for a rainy day, couldn't handle in '08 the $60,000 a month on Madison Avenue rent. So you want to have your worst case outlined. If you have that outline, you know, we run multiple sets of scenarios for people, both on personal and business. And if you have the worst case outlined, you can deal with it. If you don't think about it, or you only go for the optimistic, you're not going to be prepared. And any entrepreneur will tell you that we get things thrown at us from left field. If you don't have a line of credit in place, you should. A line of credit, just one thing to keep in mind, many of the banks are in workout mode. They know that some of these businesses are going to fail. They can pull that line from you at any time. So you may want to have multiple sources of lines of credit. And you want to continue to pay attention to your credit score, because access to capital is the key to surviving any downturn. Couple of examples of pivots. You know, one of the things that we've done, we have a couple of caterers actually. I have a caterer in another state, and he landed the airports. So he got JFK Airports, Hudson News, and he got Houston, and he had a line of airports waiting. Well, I was so worried about him during this period, right? Because all of a sudden the restaurants are down, airline traffic is down 90%. He also sells to the grocery store, but he does the salads and sandwiches. And obviously those are not being done right now. So he, luckily for him, he has a big frozen soup line. So that's, again, an example of being able to have a pivot. You know, he had that in place and he was lucky. But, you know, what looked like a golden goose, he was on track to do a huge amount of revenue this year. And, you know, COVID-19 really affected his business. So the frozen soup is now a bigger focus than it was prior. If you're a caterer doing personal events, you want to basically expand to corporate. One of the ideas I've come up with for someone is I make these vegan truffles, and they're to die for. I have 2 different versions of them, and they're super easy to make. And in Westchester County and Fairfield County, we actually live in a vegan desert. There's no place to get vegan food. If you wanted to come over to my house or go to a friend's house who's vegan and you're not a chef, you're not a cook, there's no place to stop and pick up anything. You can also use Facebook groups. People are really tired of cooking. And a lot of people really, I am on a lot of cooking pages, and a lot of people really just run out of ideas. Or they come on the page, on its vegan page up in Connecticut, it's like, oh, I need bean recipes. You know, and it's like, okay, why do you need bean recipes? I'm thinking that they want protein that way. And so that might be just a newbie in the vegan area and doesn't really know how else to put together. But, you know, people come up, and so if you can be in the group and give your recipes away, one of my firm beliefs is I'm a cook, so I would probably never buy from someone else. So I will make that recipe. But the person that makes that recipe is not your buyer. The person that follows you and likes the recipes is your potential client. Another idea I came up with, I have a travel agent who's in my circle of influence, and he can't afford the membership. He's like terrified. So I sat down with him, he's in London. And I came up with this idea, and I actually put it in one of my blogs, and one of my friends grabbed it, texted it to me, and she goes, oh my God, I want to do this. So the idea is the travel agent partners with a chef who's out of work, with a bartender who's also out of work, with a dog walker who in many cases is not busy because everybody's doing their own walking because the dogs are home. So the dog walker delivers the meals, and you have 6 to 8 couples, and you basically do a virtual cocktail party where you're delivering the actual meal, and then the travel agent is taking you on a tour of a country. So you could do a safari in Africa, just with photos that are available online. You don't have to have anything proprietary. And then the chef cooks the food from that country with multiple courses. And then the bartender makes some fun drinks to go with it. And then the dog walker is an inexpensive way to get all this delivered if you don't want to deliver it yourself. Now, they have to be 6 to 8 couples that are close together, but you know, this can provide a fairly good income stream when you're unemployed. And then you can actually create it into an ebook. with recipes and drinks and essentially have an ad in there for yourself so that when things are better, it's an ebook. So it's easy for people to download, easy for people to buy, and it gets visibility for you. So those are ideas that, you know, I just happen to have a marketing brain, so I just come up with these ideas for clients and friends. Just two quick examples. I had a dog trainer I worked with. So this is my little consulting, and he did $80,000 in revenue. And when I went through my exercises with him, I said, how do you get clients? And he thought it was by referral. But when we actually tracked the clients, it was 80% on the internet. And then he was running from one part of Connecticut over to Bedford to Westchester to Lower Westchester. So I time blocked his days, and we color coded the days so that 2 days he was in Westchester, 1 day he was in Southern Westchester. And then I actually raised his prices dramatically because I figured out what he's making hourly. And then we focused on him running a Facebook group, inviting the female, the wives who he had done the training for. And he built his business up to 180,000 in 1 year. And so those are some ideas that you can actually really, if you sit down and just go through these tips here that I'm going to go through right now. So what you want to do is you actually want to do a 15-year business and personal goal. And that's so far away that it allows you to dream big. And that's the idea. So you really want to go through, like Michael, you have young kids, you know, so they're going to be through college at that point. Where do you want to live? How many houses do you want to have? Are you still running Sweet Soul Bakery? Have you sold it? Have you opened up multiple locations? Do you have a house on the beach? So you really just want to dream and write down all of these things. Once you get those done for the 15-year, you drop it down to a 5-year. And now you're within visible planning distance. So from the 5-year, you back it into 1 year. And then honestly, this really works. You write it down into a quarterly goal and a monthly goal. And you write those monthly goals, you write them down. One of the techniques that I actually share is I put personal goals on one side for the month and I put business on the other side. I laminate it, put a hole in it, and you hang it in the shower. And every morning when you're taking a shower, first thing in the morning, you look at your goals. And it gets you very focused on what can I do today? Because if it's written this way, that 1 month goal is going to get you closer to that 1 year, and that 1 year is going to take you to your 5-year. And so this is a really, really effective way of planning, and it becomes doable. So you're not sitting there going, oh my God, how am I going to do this? There's tons of online classes. If anybody wants to email me, I'm happy to give those out. Books on planning. There's templates that you can download for business planning. SCORE can be a good resource, but the SCORE retired executives, so it really depends on where they came from. If you're an entrepreneur, I personally find the guys that retired from IBM are not usually very effective, so you really want a former business owner. There's also tons of business coaches. We have all different types that we refer out. I'm not a coach. I don't do weekly calls. I don't do monthly calls. I map out the strategy and help people implement, but I don't do any boots on the ground. I'm not there on a weekly basis or coming in to look at the business. I love podcasts. Podcasts I can listen to when I'm running with my dogs, driving to see my horse, you know, putting makeup on. So these are some of my favorite ones. And again, this is going to be recorded. I can put it in chats if you like, or I can email it out to any of you. But it's going to be The Unstoppable CEO by Steve Gordon. He's got some great guests. He's got great down-to-earth advice. I really like his style, and he's been doing extra webinars right now, or extra things about pivot. Another one that really gets you in the sense of understanding how to be hands-off is this woman, Mandy Ellerson. I find her tonality really obnoxious, but she's got really good information. And then this local business is actually a food guy. So he has another podcast called Pizza, or Pizza something, but this brew serving, it's local business. So he really talks about local businesses with a food emphasis and how you market, how you reach out. Social media marketing with Michael Stelzner is fabulous. He's got tons of ideas, from Instagram people to low-cost Facebook ads. And then if you're feeling troubled or anxious, I find Stephen James with this Project Life Mastery is very uplifting. Some of it's a little hokey, but he has a morning routine that he goes through that takes like 2 hours, which is great if you're rich like he is at this point, but he came from nothing. And so I find that these are all really helpful. I'm going to come back to questions here in just a second, but I have 10 tips. I covered an awful lot of information. I normally do this a little bit longer. It's in person, so I can see the audience and see if you have questions. I write weekly. I write effective strategies for success. I'm happy to sign anyone up for it. I always love referrals for speaking engagements, and I'm happy to do a complimentary meeting with anybody, you know, at all. So I covered an awful lot of information. So if you're processing, anybody have questions?
I don't necessarily.
Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Deborah.
Go ahead, Deborah.
Question yet, but I thought that was a great presentation. Thank you. And I think your contact information was down at the bottom of each slide. So you said you have a mailing list or some kind of notice. I'd like
Yeah,
to.
I have effective strategies for success.
Yeah, I'd
So,
like
yeah.
to be on your mailing list.
You know, do you want to go to the chat and just put your email in, and that way I'll grab it?
I will. Thanks.
And Deborah, what business are you in? What do you do?
I'm a board certified holistic health coach and a vegan lifestyle coach and educator. I don't know if this is in your face. I can't tell. And so basically I practice a whole food plant-based lifestyle, and I teach people how to cook SOS free, no salt, no oil, no sugar. So I specialize in weight loss management and do individual and group coaching. The name of my business is Let Us Turn Up Your Health. And it's actually kind of new. I retired from 30 years in state government, so I'm in transition. And I don't know, this whole thing with COVID-19 messed me up, but I want to start doing videos, cooking videos and such like that. So I've been trying that. It's not that easy to do by yourself. There probably is an easy way to do it, but I don't know it. I had my sister helping me for a while, but it was difficult because I don't have all the technology that I need or am as familiar as I should be, because I wasn't going in this direction necessarily. But the other thing is I go to her house and I don't want to, I got the coronavirus on my mind, and it's like, you know, it's like crazy. Do I stay there? Do I not stay there? I don't know. So I'm just interested in what you have to say, and that's what I'm doing. And that's
great.
Yeah,
that's great. Tony Robbins has a great podcast. It's a long one. It's over an hour long, but he interviews a couple of epidemiologists. I'm personally in the camp where I think this is stupid that we have the shutdown. It's doing nothing but economic destruction, and we're not, 85% of the deaths are over age 65. They're really the people that are sick or diabetes, et cetera. So, you know, Japan has 2% of the death rate that we have because they're wearing masks, and, you know, they're just as crowded as we are. They're just as dense. But anyway, Tony interviews, you know, the epidemiologists. Anybody that disagrees with the WHO is getting kicked off YouTube. And so there's some good information. I also have a food photographer who I can introduce you to, and you could probably ask Bill for some tips.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah,
I just sent you my email or just posted it.
I saw that. Yep, great, perfect. Julie, did you have a question?
Yeah, first I want to say thank you so much. I really actually enjoyed this, and I learned some things, and I appreciate what you presented to us. I had a couple questions. One was, what do you recommend? I mean, I'm going toward the beginning of your presentation, but for the younger generations, Gen Y, or millennials, and the Gen Z, what do you recommend in terms of the approach with them? Because my business partner, you didn't get to meet her yet, Alexandra, but, you know, we're trying to think of interactive ways, and, you know, obviously very heavy on the social media aspect, but ways to engage them more to buy. And what you said about their purchasing power, or how much they're going to really make up for the income in the US or across the world, well, like that's amazing.
Yeah, but it's a little bit of a misnomer, because they're going to make up 45% of the income, but it's because
they're not going to make that much.
They're not going to really have the discretionary income.
Yeah.
So that's part of the challenge, right? In terms of selling to them, I would suggest you listen to social media marketing and Gary Vaynerchuk. He's got a mixed reputation, but he's really, really forward on utilizing social media. So his latest is TikTok. I personally can't even think about doing one more thing, But a lot of my friends, a lot of my younger friends, because I'm in the rescue world, I've got all kinds of 20-something-year-olds, you know, and 30-year-olds as well rescuing. And they do, I mean, they do these little hearts on their face and all kinds of stuff. But Gary Vanderchuck is big in using TikTok. And that may be something, because apparently there's some new thing. I forgot what it was called. Steve Gordon mentioned it the other day about how their kids will know something. So I think getting through the noise, I definitely think Instagram for what you do. Julie makes pet clothing basically with messages, really cute, adorable clothing. And she's a former Bloomberg journalist and producer, and so is her partner Alexander came from finance. So they launched this, what, 2 years ago?
Well, we you know, formed the LLC at the end of 2016, and then yes, a couple, since probably for the past 2 years, been much more active, and you know, this is it. So Deborah, props to you too. We're totally focused on this. This is, you know, everything right now other than our personal lives or families. So yeah, and we also make gear for humans that also match some of the catchy and timely slogans on the dog clothes, and we're doing some other things too. And Kathy, thank you. We posted the article today with where you are featured as a super mom, a super adoption and foster animal mom. So
that's great.
You get to check that out. The other question I had too is the circle of influence. Can you speak about that a little bit more? I did look at the email and everything, but.
Yeah, so what I have is, you know, when you need a new expert, last week one of my CFOs called me, she emailed me and she goes, do you have a turnaround expert in food? And because I do so much in food, she thought I would, and I didn't. And she's up in Connecticut, she's up by New Haven. So somebody I have is on Long Island. I don't think he'll travel, and I don't think it's a big enough business. And it's food manufacturing. So that gets even more specific. So when you need a new expert, I have a huge network and I'm a connector. And so I'm able to reach out to dozens of people quickly and just say, hey, do you know, I went to the head of Markham's food and beverage division and said, Lou, do you have a turnaround expert in food? Right. And so I can find someone, but finding the right person when you need someone is really difficult. And making a mistake with an expert is really expensive. I don't care whether it's a coach, CPA. My first CPA didn't file my sub S with the state of New York. I operated for almost 8 years without us. Well, we've tried to fix it after a few years, but then the penalties and everything else. I paid $27,000 in state taxes that I never should have paid.
Yeah. Ouch.
And all because he knew me really well, treated me like a kid sister instead of as professional. Right. And so those are the mistakes. So what we did is we formed a membership organization. So people have to be referred in. I have to have used them personally, or one of the other members have to use them. And then we showcase them on my website. And so there's a Circle of Influence tab where you can find an expert searching. Now, getting everybody to update their profiles is another matter. And then we hold connection half hours, so we encourage the members to get to know one another. Because someone like me, my business owner, doesn't actually go out to events. You know, where would I meet Michael's, you know, he's running Sweet Soul all the way out the end of Long Island. Like, I would never meet him other than the vegan food group in Long Island Food Council. But unless you're going to go to an industry organization, it's very hard, like the septic owners, the oil and gas guys in these local towns. Those are all my potential clients. And so what I find is that other experts can refer me in. So if I fractional CFO, they can say, oh my God, you really need to talk to Kathy, get your long-term plan together. You know, I have a wine business that somebody introduced me to and said they were ready to sell. Well, it's a complete disaster where they got too many capital in and they got diluted. And so we're actually doing an end run because small world, I happen to know one of the other partners. And so I'm bringing an M&A guy in to see if we can sell it. But you just, it's amazing how to find the right people. So that's really what the Circle of Influence is. And so my business owners, when I come in, I introduce everybody. So I will give you the right CPA, the right pension person, the right lawyer, the right trust estate, whatever it is that they need. My business owners, I try to supply to make their lives easier. And so it's an extension of that.
Oh, thank you. Yep, thank you.
Sure.
Kathy, how important are hashtags on Instagram?
Critical, really critical. You can do a test. You can put it up without a hashtag and then put it up afterwards, again, a second post with hashtags, and then check your insights. And you'll see what you want is non-followers to follow you, because your own followers are already who you know, right? So you want to attract the outside world. And so that's where the hashtags, and you have
So
to
you can
play
end
with
up with like 50 hashtags.
Yeah, you'll see, if you follow, like I follow Rabbit and Wolves and Nora Cooks Vegan. They're two of my favorite recipe pages. They're both phenomenal. They post a lot. I mean, their tags are like this. So I don't know if they copy and paste it and put it on, because I hate doing
It
that.
takes so much time.
I
They
know,
must.
I know, it is.
No, thank
It matters on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, sometimes I get a trending under marketing, or some other, I'll do vegan food. So you got to just try different things. I put my dogs up just because I'm, rescue, and I attract a lot of animal people, and I love working with, people in food and animals. And then I will hashtag things like adopt, don't shop, pity, love, and then I end up with Pitbull followers and all kinds of other people following me. But you have to play with it. I check my Instagram daily. I check the posts and I look at the insights and I see how many views and what percent were not following me prior.
Okay, thank you. Forgive me, I have to run, but this was great. Thank you, Michael, for inviting me. Everybody, good luck, and I hope to see all of you soon.
Yes, we actually can see each other.
Reality. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining us, Deborah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Michael, Ro?
No, I just wanted to thank you. I found it very informative. I actually I took a bunch of notes and screen captures, and I got to process all the information that you said, but it was really informative. And what I was thinking was, I don't know how often you have or how many different subjects you want, but I would like to kind of build this into the group. And I'm thinking that maybe I just make the group that I started, the big customer group, just public as opposed to private, and to bring more people in, and maybe we could have a subset that's private for more of a working group type of thing.
Yeah.
But I'd love to have you speak more. I found it very informative and useful, stuff that I can actually use in the real world. Which right now you don't want to sit there kind of filtering through information, trying to figure out what you want to use. You want to find people who have good information so you can just run with it. And that's what I've done this debate.
Well,
so I really
covered
appreciate
a
it.
huge amount today, right?
Yes, you did.
We can break it down, like the 5 pillars can be just one thing. We can operate just from that and go into the 5 pillars. What mistakes you make, how to create a business plan, how do you run projections, how do you figure out food costs, how to figure out verticals. And then, one of the mistakes I made, I opened an office up in Katona when my main office was in the city, and I never did the costs myself. I had somebody locally I wanted to work as an advisor, and she didn't want to commute to the city. And I opened an office, and I cost me $30,000 a year just in rent. And unless we're going to attract one new client, one really good new client every single year, it's got to be a $5 million asset management client to generate $50,000 in order just to make that business, that rent profitable, right? And so, I've made lots and lots of my own mistakes. I've made tons of hiring mistakes. So, I have a couple of these. I have one called 9 Tips to Blast Off Your Business. I have one specifically on sales. I have other ones, the business is the baby, or you're going to let it grow up. So I have lots and lots of things. But do me a favor, tell Michael Tucker, I would love to do this with the entire Food Council.
Okay.
And
I definitely will.
Yeah, wonderful.
I think that should probably be done outside the regular meeting for them. I mean, there's no reason, we're a subset of the Food Council, and what you're saying, even though you're vegan, I'm vegan, but what you're saying isn't necessarily vegan centric at all. So I think that probably it would make sense if you did it for the larger Food Council and then did it on a different day, so it's just an extra resource for people. And I love what you just said, the 5 pillars. I'd love to hear that more hashed out. Go into depth on each one of these subjects, and that can just all be separate talks. Maybe do it once a month, or whatever frequency people can fit into their schedule. And go from there. That'd be great.
Great, wonderful. All right, Ro, you've been quiet. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. I'll record it and I'll send a link to you all.
Okay.
Great.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
All right,
Appreciate
wonderful.
it.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Michael. Bye, Ro. Bye.
And the dog.